Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for the Master in Development Studies program, major in the Social Policy for Development major. Here with me today is Dina Arunima and the convener or the course leader for the major, Kristen Jane. Unfortunately, Kristen's video is, the system does not allow her to show her video for some weird reason. So she will, at least her audio is working. So you can hear her present about the major. So without further ado, I will pass on the floor to Kristen, and she will start with giving an overview of the Spd major. Kristen.
Okay, thanks, Darren, and thanks, Dina and Arunima, for being here. Yeah, and again, sorry that I can't actually be seen, but hopefully you don't really need to see me. We'll just go through a little bit of what the major in Spd entails, and then, of course, there will be some time for questions afterwards. So let me just go through our presentation here. Yeah, as mentioned, actually Arunima and Dina are student representatives, so they were elected by their peers to represent social policy for development. And as Darren mentioned, I'm the convener, and we come from India, Indonesia, and the US respectively. As a convener, it's basically, I really handle all the student relations and the administrative work. So that's why I'm in this position to tell you a little more about Spd. So let me first start by saying a little bit about the broader MA program, in case you're unfamiliar. The ISS does offer the MA in Development Studies over the course of 15.5 months, and that is 88 credits. We measure things in ECTs, so you'll see this throughout the presentation. That's just the standard unit of measuring academic credits in the Netherlands. So each student enrolls in one of the 5 majors that we have, and you can see them listed here. And of course, we're talking today solely about social policy for development, but you'll see that there are also opportunities to interact with some of the other majors and take courses in the other majors as well. Some of the key features of our MA program are that we are really, and I truly believe this, a uniquely international and diverse learning experience. Typically every year we have somewhere, well, Corona year has been a bit different, but usually we have something between 150 and 200 master's students every year. And they often come from 50 to 60 different countries, and mostly from the global south. So something like 30%, and Darren can maybe correct me on these latest numbers, but last I've heard about 30% come from Africa, about 30% come from Asia, the greater Asian continent, and about 20% from Latin America, and maybe a smattering of others from Europe and North America. Students carry out individual research projects. We call it the RP, or the research paper, but it's basically an MA thesis. In Spd, what we have, and a few majors do this, but we do have a field research fund for those who do need a little bit of financial support if they want to do research abroad, or they want to do primary data collection. And that's a competitive fund where we have people submit applications to have some funding to do to cover travel and things like that for doing your research. So there's a bit of support for that. Lately, of course, under the situation with Corona last year, people could not travel, and so they mainly had to do remote data collection, or they did secondary data analysis, looking at documents and those sorts of things. All courses, though, do integrate theory, practice, and policy. So let me tell you a little bit more about the major itself. We're centrally concerned in social policy for development about questions of poverty, inequality, and social exclusion. And we do look at social policy systems. So we take a kind of macro view, but also I think in doing a lot of the work, we kind of start from the bottom up. So we also do a lot of micro analysis of how systems affect individuals and communities at the local level. And we're also looking at how social policies reproduce or potentially transform social inequalities. So it is a very critical stance. It's not a program for you know, the ABCs of how do you do social policy or how do you make social policy, is rather looking very critically at how social policy does, in fact, get constructed and how it plays out and how it's implemented. So it's a very interdisciplinary approach in that regard. And some of the key theoretical strands we look at are critical political economy and also post-structuralist perspectives. Some examples of that are a lot of our faculty and students will look at things in the course of their Spd major around basic income grants and employment guarantee programs as effective policy approaches to social protection. You know, do those cash transfer programs, things like that, how do they work? What are the sort of gaps in implementation, or what are the sort of unintended effects of these kinds of systems? Also issues of inclusiveness and power, for example, in educational systems. And we have a strong focus on children and youth studies, and I'll say a little more about that in a minute, but we also look at, you know, things like what do young people themselves have to say about youth politics? How are they seen as objects and or subjects of development? So as I mentioned, we have a children youth studies specialization. So I'll explain a little more how specializations fit into the major in a moment. But you can also specialize outside the major, and I'll mention some of that. Some other focuses of our work, our coursework, the faculty who teach here are around, and I work in children and youth studies, but there are some who focus a lot on work and employment, and so those kinds of issues come into discussions in class, as well as population studies and poverty studies more broadly. So that's a bit of the expertise of some of our faculty and some of the broader topics that some of our coursework deals with. Our teaching approach is really working with the diversity at ISS, and I think for myself, as someone who has been here just over 10 years now, this is one of the things I appreciate most about ISS, is that we do have students who come from all over the world, and often they come with work experience as well. So it's not just that they're thinking about these things in theory. They're actually coming sometimes back to study in order to understand a little bit more about the kinds of work what underlies the kinds of work that they're doing. So they really are mid-level professionals, mid-career, trying to think about, you know, a little bit differently about the kinds of work that they're doing. So what they might lack sometimes in academic acumen, they actually more than make up for, I would say, in terms of their experience. So I think, and maybe Dina and Arunima can speak a little bit to this, but often in our classes, probably the most common phrase that's uttered is, well, in my country, it's like this or it's like that. So people bring all this experience, and I think in some ways students tend to learn more from each other than they do from us as faculty. So we draw on that. We draw on that in our teaching. We try to do really participative lectures where we give people a chance to share you know, what their experiences have been, what their impressions are, and that also brings a lot to interpretation of things like the readings. So I think it is really, really more than the sum of its parts in that regard, that students really learn a lot from discussing with each other as much as they do, you know, from the readings and the lectures. We try to be very easily approachable. That's a bit difficult under COVID circumstances as well, when we can't get closer than 1.5 meters from each other. But we do make ourselves available, and you can always go and, you know, ask to speak to a professor about the kinds of work that they're doing, or just have discussions, meet up for a coffee, that sort of thing. We try to really innovate in teaching, especially, you know, now when we have been doing a lot of online teaching. We're incorporating more use of multimedia and trying to do really interactive learning kinds of arrangements, and do work relevant assignments, as well as assignments that really help to contribute towards this eventual original research paper that you do as the sort of main activity of your master. So there is space to work on your own interests through assignments and the research paper itself. We also do things like study visits, and this picture here is from a study visit to Budapest a few years ago. This year we have also had to postpone that necessarily through no fault of our own, but again, Corona. So we're hoping to do that a little later in June. But last year, I think the students went to Copenhagen. In years past, we've gone to Rome. We've got, done a lot of different kinds of study trips. And typically what we do is we spend a couple of days where we visit a few organizations in that local area, organizations that are working on development issues. Sometimes they might be oriented more towards things like research. So I recall a few years ago when we went to Rome, the Children and Youth Studies specialization actually went up to Florence because the UNICEF Innocenti Research Center is based in Florence, Italy. So we went to what was the flagship center for UNICEF, and we talked to people there who were doing research, which was really great because they are doing the kinds of stuff that we have to do for our masters, as an assignment, the research papers. So they're talking about what are the kinds of topics that they were researching in order to inform the work of UNICEF. So we do that sort of thing. And of course, in the meantime, we also get to do a lot of sightseeing around that particular city that we go to. And it's usually within the EU, just to avoid any sort of visa issues. Because if you come to the Netherlands to study, you already have the Schengen visa that allows you to travel within the EU. So we select sites through the EU and have a long weekend basically where we do a study trip, learn a little bit from these other organizations, and then also get to know each other better and bond through, experiencing a new city together, and get to be tourists a little bit at the same time. So those are some of the activities that we do through teaching. I want to say a little bit about the courses. So in the Spd Major, there are currently 2 compulsory courses, and that is what we call a foundation course for Spd, or is it core course? I always get my terminology messed up, but basically it's the course that everyone in Spd takes in the first term 1B in fact. It's called Critical Social Policy for Transformative Development. So again, you see the word critical in there, that it's not about, this is how you do social policy, A, B, C, D, and it's done. It's more about really looking at what are the effects of the kinds of social policy that happens, and how can we think about those things differently in order to transform and bring about social change. So that course is 8 credits. We also have a mini course that is about working toward the research paper. So this is really a course that's only 3 credits, but it's designed to help students move along in their research paper process. So it's really to support the writing of that original master's thesis. It's combined with any of the following courses in term 2 or 3. So one is the ISS course on poverty, gender, and social protection. Your other option is Children, Youth, and Development Policy and Practice. And this is also one of the 2 courses that you might take if you want a specialization in children and youth studies, which again, I'll come back to in a moment. And of course, then the research paper is the major activity, and that's 27 credits, in fact, within the field. So your paper ideally, does deal with something that is social policy related, but that's very broadly conceptualized. So that's a little bit of some of the choices. Let me tell you about some of the other courses you could take that could also fulfill the total number of credits, those 88 credits that you need. So as I mentioned, Critical Social Policy for Transformative Development takes place in that term 1B. And Roy taught that this year. There's a little picture of him up there in the top left corner. In term 2, we have these 2 options. One is 4202, that's Poverty and Inequality, and Andrew Fisher has taught that this year, and I think is likely to teach it again next year. The other course that people can take is Children and Youth Studies in Development Context, and you see that's actually me over there on the left, the middle left, 4218. That's the course that I teach, and that's the first course that fulfills the Children and Youth Studies specialization if you're interested in that. And that's optional, but that's in term 2. In term 3, we have 4311, which again it counts as a required course for your overall major. That's Children, Youth, and Development. So between my course and then Alma's course 4311, there's a picture of Alma there, that would fulfill the specialization as well. If you took both of those courses, and then you did your paper on a child or youth related topic. Another option, however, is the 4355, and that's Gender at Work and Development, and Karen Siegman teaches that. There's a picture of her there. So this gives you a bit of, and it's mapped onto the sort of the terms, and this comes from, actually it looks like it's an older calendar, but it gives you the idea of how the terms work and approximately what time they take place. So term 1 starts in September, and we go through a winter and a spring term, and then term 4 is typically from July onward when people do their research, and then they come back and they write up their RP and they graduate in December. So that gives you some idea of how the major is structured within the overall MA program, I hope. There's kind of 2 ways to achieve the Spd major. One is this sort of thick major, which means you take courses all within the major. So again, you have those required courses of critical social policy and working towards the research paper, and you combine that with one of the following in term the term 2 or 3, and that's poverty and inequality or the children youth studies course. And then you can take, oh, these should be the other way around. Sorry, this is thin. You could take 2 other 8-credit courses from outside of the Spd major. So in fact, it's mislabeled. That's the sort of thin option, meaning you're doing just a few courses to fulfill the Spd requirement, but then you're taking courses from outside Spd as well. So again, it's possible to take courses across the major. The thick option would be where you take the same 2 required courses, and then you combine it with 2 or 3 of the ones that are all within Spd. And maybe, again, Arunima and Dina could speak to sort of the routes that they're taking currently and what sort of options and flexibility these afford. So as I mentioned, there are 3 levels. So of your MA. So you get an MA in development studies if you fulfill all the requirements and get all your credits and pass all your courses. You also end with a major, and in this case it would be Spd. And then you have that option to specialize, and that means 16 credits of coursework and a research paper. You have the option to not specialize at all. That's not required. Specializing inside the major, our option currently is Children Youth Studies specialization. Outside the major, there are a few other options for a specialization. You could do one in public policy and management if you take the required courses and also do your research paper on topics that are relevant to that specialization. Same with local development strategies. We also have a specialization called Women and Gender Studies, and Conflict and Peace Studies is another option. Just a few of the ones that are examples of what Spd students sometimes specialize in, although there are a few others as well, and you can see that in the course catalog from any of the 5 majors. So each major has 1 or maybe 2 different kinds of specializations. Some examples of our Spd research papers, and they might be a little bit small and hard to read, but I'll just read you some examples of the kinds of papers people have written. On the top left, we have Legitimizing Adolescent Girls' Voices, Menstrual Cup as the Mediator of Menstrual Hygiene Management in Urban Informal Settlements in Kenya, from a Kenyan student, Sheila Mriti. We also have an example here from El Salvador, a student from El Salvador who did work on domestic workers and Social Security. What must they do to get by? More recently, last year, these are actually 2 examples from last year. We had a student, and these were both papers that received distinctions, I believe. One from the Philippines, this is Justine. She did a paper called Excluded from Within, Nuancing Integration and Inclusion through the lived experiences of Filipino children and youth with disability into inclusive education schools. So looking at inclusive education. And then Himani from India did a paper called Abandoned by the State, the Migrant Crisis and Public Action in the Time of COVID-19 in India. So that was an example. Actually, both of them were very good examples of how, given the unpredictable circumstances of COVID and the fact that students weren't able to travel because of the closure of international borders and the danger of the pandemic, they actually still managed to do very, very robust research. Justine, I was actually a supervisor for Justine's paper, and she was very much looking to do very close participatory field work with children with disabilities in the Philippines. And when she found that she couldn't travel, she actually came up with very interesting remote participatory methods, very innovative methods for working with children with disability in the Philippines, but doing that through like WhatsApp and Google Video and things like that. So that was one of the things that really earned her paper a distinction, was her very innovative methodology. With Himani, she was looking at the issue of the migrant crisis that was spurred actually by the corona measures in India. And that paper as well earned a distinction because it was very astute and very at the last minute, even though at the last minute in some senses she shifted to this topic of COVID-19 and how it spurred this crisis of migration, particularly of informal workers just trying to get home for the lockdown, and led to a lot of suffering around those issues. But she did a very good analysis of that situation. So those are some of the possibilities that, gives you an idea of some of the possibilities of different studies you might do within the Spd major. If you want to learn more or follow ISS, you can look at all these, and maybe Darren, I don't know if you'd like to say more about those in a moment, but there are lots of different possibilities for following ISS on social media. And that's all that we have on Spd for the moment, but I'll let Dina and Arunima share their experiences, and then you can also maybe ask questions after that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kristen, for the very precise, informative information about the major itself. Oh, Kristen?
Yeah, I'm
Kristen?
still here. I stopped sharing my screen.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay.
I can see you.
Okay, I'm going to introduce Dina, and Dina and Arunima is going to introduce themselves and also share a little bit of background where they're from, what they have, what their background is before they joined to ISS, and why they have chosen ISS, and also some specialization if they're doing any, and also what they want to do in the future. So maybe Dina can go first.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Den Haag. My name is Dina Hairani. You can call me Dina. I am from Indonesia, as Kristen already mentioned before. It's very interesting when you ask about like why I choose ISS, because I've been planning to go to ISS and having master degree and specialization in child and youth studies since I was 17 years old. So when I was in high school, I've been participating in one of the international NGO in Indonesia called Spd International Indonesia, and then most of the officers there are graduated from ISS. So they told me that if you would like to, just deep dive and more concerning about development studies, go to ISS because ISS is the best place to learn about that. And also I've been like deciding that I would like to focus on child and youth because I was, in Indonesia, I created this kind of organization called as Lapor You. It's actually an online reporting mechanism for sexual violence against children in Indonesia. So there's an app. And I think that before I chose ISS, I said, okay, I would like to spread it out all around Indonesia so people and child in Indonesia can use these apps. So whenever they, encounter sexual violence, they can just like one click away from the phone. So it's easy. And then I come to ISS. It's really interesting because I've been like feeling so close with ISS, even though I've never been here before. But as mentally and psychologically, I feel like so close. And it's interesting because I entered this master degree when COVID-19 hit so hard. So before that, I have never, meet this person line. And yeah, just like that. But however, ISS really, prepared a lot of things about this. Since like, even though I cannot meet the professor or the people, people around here, but still I can just like having this WhatsApp group and everything, and also working together along with Arunima for Spd Major and etc. But the point that I would like to highlight here, which is it's very different with most of school in Indonesia, the teacher in here are very approachable. It's just like one message away. Like whenever I feel like, hey, I have like a problem, I have mentor in SPD, he is Roy, and it's very close with him because he's very approachable as well. And not only Roy, all the teachers in ISS, not only particularly in SPD, if you got trouble, find something, and you just would like to discuss, even though this is COVID-19, it's just like text them or email them. It's like they will reply very fast. It's not like there is no hierarchical patriarchy or whatever it is. There's nothing such as that. It's easy, and I love that because you can really just having another sharing knowledge with other colleagues in here, people here coming from all around the world. You have like friends more than 46 countries all over the world here. You cannot meet that maybe if I pursue it in Indonesia. And then also, not only that, the background of my friends here are very diverse, like from the academia, the one that have been pursued PhD or having fourth master now and everything. It's just like amazing. Since I just graduated and also working for 3 years and then continue my master degree here, it's so amazing because you can share anything anywhere with many friends here. And the last thing before I go to Arnima, here the teachers and the students are very, they support us a lot. So even though this is like during COVID-19, SPD students just like conducted development o'clock. It's actually student-led webinar. We did that because we think that, yeah, it's quite hard just to conduct the webinar or series, whatever it is. So we do our own thing. And then we invited many great speakers all around the world or globe, whatever. Every month we will conduct it every month. So it's just so nice just to have this kind of thing and supported by many people in SPD. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Dina, for the very in-depth experience that you had till now at ISS. And as Dina rightly said, we have about 46 nationalities. It's very unique at ISS, and this is why students come to ISS as well for this kind of networking. This year, it's a bit more difficult to meet physically, but as Dina said, there's this WhatsApp group and other kind of apps that you can use to get connected. And I also know that sometimes students do meet face-to-face, but at a distance, of course. We have to follow the rules here and there, of course. So that's good. Okay, so Arunima.
Hi everyone, my name is Arunima and I am from India and well, specifically from New Delhi. And I have been in academics all my life really. I did my undergrad and my postgrad in Delhi University, and then I went and I got a PhD, but it was in English literature. So what I'm doing now is something completely different, or well, there are some tiny bits of overlaps, but it's very different. So and then I was also working back in Delhi University as a lecturer, and and then suddenly I figured out that because a lot of things that we do study in literature are also about poverty and gender issues and sexuality and so on and so forth. So I just felt that I would want to do work on these issues concerning these things in a more direct manner and not just go the roundabout way by just doing literature. I still love it. I'm not going to dish my first love. I still love literature, and I will probably keep pursuing it later. But this was something that I just really wanted to do, and this got triggered when after my master's I took a year, and then I was working with Teach for India, and the thing is, when you grow up in a place like India or like in Delhi, you see slums and you see street kids everywhere, and then you become very desensitized. But when you start really working with them, because that's what Teach for India really is, that you work with kids coming from economically weak backgrounds, and they're struggling with a lot of things. There's a lot of domestic violence in their homes. They don't have food to eat, and then how do you sort of engage them to study in a classroom? So that's really what Teach for India is about, and I assume some of you might know about. So since then, it was sort of nagging in my mind that I want to do something more. And so finally, I decided to come to ISS. So it was quite different going back to school and being on the other side again, because I got very used to being in the front of the class lecturing, but then now it's the other way around. And it's kind of, but at the same time, as Dina pointed out, that everybody is very approachable here, which was really not the case, you know, back home. I would say that I am fairly approachable when I teach, but it doesn't match up. Like, there's a clear hierarchy back in India where I taught and where I studied as well. As for what you can expect from Spd, I think Christian really gave a great overview, and what I would be interested, like if you're really interested in, let's say, poverty studies, or if you want to look at health, or if you want to look at education and policies surrounding them, and not so much as like how policies are written, but like what effects are these policies having on the groups that they are intended for, and also unintentionally how the policies work, and so on and so forth. But you can obviously take other optionals from other majors. And as for specialization, I am specializing in children studies, and and for my RP, for my MA thesis, I would probably be working on something to do with children in conflict-prone areas. And for that reason, I'm also trying to bring another, so I'm sort of take some courses from the SJP major, the Social Justice Perspectives major, to I'm taking a couple of courses from conflict studies as well. So what I'm trying to say is that you really have a lot of options to mix and match. And I would, even though you don't necessarily need an RP topic right when you arrive, because I mean, we're still all sort of figuring out our RP topic at this point, but if you have something in mind, then it's a very good idea to look at the courses and then pick accordingly what would really work for you. That said, I would also say that it's been a difficult year for all of us, and we hope that, you know, when you guys arrive, it would be better and you would be able to have some peer interactions and so on and so forth. And but that said, as Christian pointed out, that it hasn't been all that bad. Like, Adina and I are actually already in The Hague, and we are in our rooms we are right next to the ISS, and so I can see it up from my window. So yeah, that's really all I have to say. I hope I haven't forgotten anything, but I really, you know, look forward to welcoming you guys, and if you want to reach out to any of us, you're very welcome to. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Arunima. Yeah, as she rightly said, ISS is just beside where they are staying now. Is just beside ISS. Is literally 30 seconds walk, and you will be at ISS. So you can never be late for class if class do move physically. Yeah. Yeah. So now talking about your research paper earlier, Arunima. There is a question about that, about how did you think about your research paper before you came or during your classes? And this is not just for Arunima, this is also for Dina. Maybe both of you can share your experience, how you came about with your research paper. Because some students, they thought about it before they come to ISS, and then when they come to ISS, they learn about the program and they go into the major, they start to change their thesis, of course, you know, because there's so many options suddenly. But how did you manage this? Maybe Dina can go first.
Okay, for me, because I already know that I would like to do this master and specialization, that's why I already planned about my topic even before I come to ISS. And it's also because I got the scholarship from Indonesian government. One of the requirements is I have to do the study plan, so I have to mention what is my topic even before I got the scholarship. So that's why I already think about that. However, when I arrive here, I also taking the specialization like Arunima, Child and Youth Studies, but I have another courses which is policy analysis and design. And it's a very practical thing. It's really helpful to support like the analysis part for my research paper. Before that, I think only for the sexual violence against children. But after I got the policy analysis and design, I think I have to also use for example, multi-criteria analysis, how to make sure that this reporting mechanism for sexual violence will be, adjustable and also helpful, and I can measure it, something like that. So it's not really like you have to prepare it before that, but if you have that, it's good, because you will choose the courses like, okay, you can mix and match. But also when you already have that, it's good, and you are here, you will meet other people and you discuss with them or the professor, you can get another insights from them. Oh, I think, yeah, I should do this and that and something like that. So don't really think about that, because for me especially, this is like the sudden death for us. There is another deadline for research paper preparation, but still, even though you're already prepared, doesn't mean that you can just like go like that. You can just change everything every time. It's not like it's already fixed or something like that, even during the preparation of RP. I think like that.
Thank you, Dina. Arunima?
Yeah, that's a good question, really. I did come with the thought about what I want to do as for my research paper, but then after attending all these classes, and I just got exposed to so many different ideas and thoughts that I actually ended up changing it, and now I want to work on something completely different. And that is okay, you can, I mean, if you think that you have decided on a certain research paper, and unless you're under some kind of obligation to write about that, because I understand a lot of people here come on specific scholarships and they're expected to produce a certain type of research paper. But if you don't have those constraints, you don't have to be married to your research paper as such from the very beginning. You are allowed to sort of change and think about other options, really, because in the end of the day, and this is what we are told quite a few times in ISS, that you're going to be dedicating about 4 months, or actually even more, trying to write this research paper. And if you don't really like the topic, then it's probably not a good idea to go with that topic and find something else. You would get a lot of help from the staff again, and you can go and run your ideas through them and so on and so forth. They're all very, very helpful in that sense. And so yeah, my answer is, if you do have a research paper in mind and you really want to work about it and you're absolutely sure, then that's great. And even if you don't, you would be exposed to plenty of ideas and concepts, and that would definitely help you formulate one eventually. So it's not a big problem if you don't have an idea. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Arunima. Kristen, do you have anything to add, if any?
Yeah, I mean, I think they already mentioned the important aspects, which is that, nothing's ever written in stone. So I think that does happen a lot to people. Like, your trajectories aren't that unusual, and that sometimes even people with very clear ideas coming in can get exposed to new ideas. And to me, that's a good thing, because it's proof that they're really, they're thinking, and they're willing to be open to engaging in some new ideas, and that can lead them in very different research directions that they also end up being really enthusiastic about. So to me, that's a mark of success in terms of our teaching, that we have students who are willing to take those kinds of risks, and we always try to support and reward that kind of thinking about it. I would also just mention that one of the things that I think is really great about our research paper process is that we have certain punctuated moments where people present their research in seminars. So before you go off to do your field work, you do a dissertation or a research paper design seminar. And it's not only that you get feedback from your supervisors and your second readers, who are the staff who help assist you with the development of your project, but we also ask student discussants to give feedback. So we have a very peer review learning approach as well, where we encourage students to really, and typically people take that responsibility really seriously, and they give very good feedback to each other. And so we also encourage people to attend as many of these design seminars as they can, but basically each student gets an hour in the spring to just talk about their research project and get advice on developing their research project from the broader community. And there's other smaller ways in which this happens, but I think that's such a good experience, because it really does help people move forward in ways that maybe they hadn't thought about when they get advice from others. The same thing happens again in the fall, when people typically come back with a draft paper. So they'll present their draft papers in the fall. And again, they get really fantastic feedback from their supervisory team, but also from each other on how to move forward and how to get to the finish line of writing the paper. So I think those are really great experiences. I think sometimes students do, there's a bit of trepidation around the seminars because they can be a bit intimidating. But really, I always assure them beforehand, no, actually, it's a really great opportunity for you to just talk about your own research in your own dedicated seminar. And they're labor intensive because we have many students. So we really just take a whole week out of the schedule typically to do these. But they're so worth it because I think students get a lot of feedback and really it helps their development and they get ways to move forward in their research from those seminars that are really valuable.
Thank you, Kristen. There's a question about exams and grades. I think this can go to Kristen and the students, so maybe the students can answer first. What kind of exams do you have, and how is it so far? I mean, everything is online at the moment, of course. How does it impact you with doing all your exams and assignments and group work online? Maybe you can share a little bit of your experience. Maybe we start with Arunima first this time.
Yeah, so it really depends because every course is not evaluated the same way. They all have their different criteria. And a good idea would be to sort of look at your academic calendar or the academic brochure that you get, and you can just see that what course you're interested in and how they're graded. Like, because it would say 35, let's say 80% individual assignment, 20% group assignment, or 50% take home essay, or 50% take home exam, or something like that. So it really depends, and that is also something that you might want to consider if you are bent towards maybe not doing take-home exams, like 24-hour take-home exam, which we have had. And if that's too stressful for you and you want to take courses which only has assignments, well, if that's a criteria, I mean, I'm just putting it out there. But I would say that it hasn't been that bad. I mean, if you know how to manage time, really, it's really about time management. And I should have said that when I was introducing myself, that you would be reading a lot, or you're expected to read a lot, let's put it that way. And it's up to you how much you are able to read. And we also have really good guidance about how to read. Really, there's a whole course based around it, and so you can really you will have a lot of assignments. I'm not going to mince words, but you would, but it's if you know how to manage time, you should be fine. And the idea here is that IS is very strict about plagiarism, about keeping within the word limit, and so on and so forth. But plagiarism is a big deal, as it should be, and you would be given training on how not to plagiarize accidentally or deliberately, either ways. And besides that, yeah, I have done plenty of exams and assignments, and we have a whole lot this month. But as you can see, we are sort of pushing through, and that's how there would be some stressful weeks. There would be less stressful weeks, but it's manageable and it can be done. And as for the grading criteria, I feel that the professor might be a better person to talk about.
Dina, you want to share experience?
Agree. I agree with Arunima. I mean, I would like to say this month is the month of assignment. Everything, like, the deadline is like this month, so March, you couldn't be just relax a bit, but yeah, you still have to find a coping mechanism though. But for the assignment and exams, all the courses that I take, like for example, this term 2, I take child and youth studies. In this course, there are 4 kind of assignments. So you have, it's divided by 20%, 25, something like that. So it's not fully only focusing on one assignment. However, on another course like policy analysis, I only have one big policy paper. So I have to create the policy, 10,000 words, and it weighs 90% of the course. So if you are failed on that, good luck. So yeah, something like that. You have to manage on that, like for the child and youth. Yeah, there are like 4 assignments, but you can divide on that. And you know, when one assignment is not really good, you can move to another assignment and make it really good. But some courses like only one big final essay, you have to really focus on that and work very well, unless you will be in trouble because it's like 90% weight, something like that. And also it's like only like all the exams here that I get for all the courses I took, everything is about writing. So writing, absolutely writing. Besides reading, you have to be able also doing and writing very well. Like yeah, already Arunima mentioned that plagiarism is very big deal here, so don't you ever even dare to do something like that. Even the sloppy referencing, see, we have like Turnitin. Even it's only like you just write the questions in the assignment, it will be like in trouble. So you have to find out the way that you explain it in different way and read a lot and write very well, something like that. So unless even the sloppy referencing, you will be get in trouble. And there is BOE, Board of Examiner, that really read your own assignments. So yeah, but it's really challenging, but very interesting as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dina. Although you will have a lot of assignments, but also Kristen mentioned in her presentation earlier, you also can have study trips, and the study trips, if I understood correctly, is not completely cancelled yet. I understood that they might be in June, July, or somewhere in summer, that students can choose which organization, probably in the Netherlands. I'm not sure if you can go outside the Netherlands. Well, that they can choose to go and visit and learn something from. So it's not all about assignments and studying and reading. There's also other fun part, despite everything being online. About grading system, Kristen, do you want to add something about the grading system?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's good to have the student perspectives on, you know, how challenging it is in terms of the assignments and things like that. We are trying to move more towards having, you know, not just one big assignment for courses, I think, because it's about that development, right? That you get feedback before the end of the term on things, and you can work on improving that, and particularly around writing, because it's true. And I'm actually glad to hear that reflected from some students, that it's about reading, and reading skills, and we try to be supportive around reading skills. I mean, recognizing that we are teaching in English, and for a lot of students, that's their second or third or even fourth language, that it is a challenge, but also just writing. And I find sometimes, you know, as a native speaker, that even native speaking English students can, you know, find it challenging to figure out how to write in an academic register. So we do spend some time on development of that sort of thing. So I think that does help in terms of grading and doing well on assignments, particularly written assignments. But there are a variety of assignments. We also try to work on developing things like presentation skills, which is also part of why we do these seminars. That, you know, one of the ancillary benefits is that you do get used to standing in front of people if you weren't before, and presenting your ideas verbally. So I think there's some combination of those things. But in terms of grading, yeah, our system is actually, I mean, it's very much based on what is the standard in the Netherlands, which is a pass-fail system of a minimum of a score of 60 out of 100. And for the most part, there is a lot of sort of norming towards the 70s and the 80s. And there is also discussion around, you know, what are the expectations around the average, you know, average scores. But yeah, I think, you know, typically we work hard to make sure that students who put in the effort are, you know, reaching a passable standard, even if they have, if they're very far behind in some of those kinds of skills. So, you know, you do get a lot of support to do these things. And if you do fail a course, which that does happen at times where people fail an exam or they fail a course, they have the opportunities to do resits. So they can resit an exam and then get, you know, try to achieve a passing grade so they can move on with the rest of their studies. So it's very, very rare actually that people fail out of the program. So yeah, I think that's, maybe that allays any fears that might be underlying that particular question about grading and, you know, how hard it is, as well as the comments from Arunima and Dina.
Yeah. Thank you, Kristen. we move on to maybe there are a few other questions, but I think due to time constraint, I will only ask 2 more questions. But we'll see how the first question goes. It's very interesting question about career option after you have done your degree at ISS. It's a question for both of the students and also Kristen, but maybe I start with the students first about what do you want to do once you graduate with a Master of Development Studies majoring or specializing in what you are doing now? Like, what is your goal? Maybe Dina can go first.
I do really would like to have a job and career in United Nations, in UN, especially in UNICEF after I graduated. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, like that, because I am focusing, even before coming here, I've been working in NGO that focus on the fulfillment of the rights of the child. So I really would like to do that. But however, I also need to go back to Indonesia, since this is the requirement from the scholarship, and I would like to expand my organization, the reporting mechanism itself, so all the children there could just like know about that and use that whenever they encounter the sexual violence against children. And however, like ISS really provides us a lot of things. Like even we have the Facebook group only for the jobs internship. So when you are finding like, I don't know what to do after I graduated, something like that, don't worry, they are providing a lot of links, a lot of, vacancy. So you can just like see and apply on that. And it's really helpful because I think the career options after you graduate from ISS, it's really wide. Like in Indonesia, ISS is very famous. So when you are graduated from ISS, like, okay, you are graduated from ISS, yes. So I think like all NGOs, I will like, okay, you can get accepted or whatever, because it's, I think it's the best development studies in the world. I don't know. I just know that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dina. Arunima, you want to add what you want to do in the future?
Yeah, sure. So I do have, well, I'm just going to talk about from from my country's perspective, or where I come from, and given how the job market is back in India. Development studies or like working in development is not something which is lucrative. So if you're in it for that, that's probably not the thing to go with. But the idea would be that I would probably go back to India, and I would want to stay in academics, because this is what I really do enjoy, and I would try to be associated with because the university which I'm in right now does not have a development studies related course or whatever, but I would probably want to be affiliated or work with academic institutions and so on and so forth, who specifically focus on development studies. And besides that, I do have some plans, like some grassroots plans that I want to do in my own community, but I don't necessarily want to tie this to the ISS, because I don't think that I need a particular MA to do this. I can just do it besides this. So that's just one of the things. And if academia doesn't work out, I probably would want to work with a think tank or something similar. And besides that, I would say that, yeah, everybody would love to work in the UN. So that's why I didn't say that. Like UN would be the ultimate. Everybody wants that job, but I didn't want to specify that. So I'm saying besides the UN, what else can you think of? So yeah, but I also do want to stress on the fact that there's an option of Zookyear, which means search year, and this is available to students who do not have a binding contract with any kind of scholarship that requires them to go back to their home country. So I don't have something like that. So Zookyear is something that you get 1 year in the Netherlands after you graduate, and you can try and find a job in that year. You're allowed to stay and look for a job. Because outside of that, and if you, let's say, you want to remain in the Netherlands, it's very difficult, because the requirements get very, very specific and very difficult to fulfill. So that's just one of the things to consider. And many people have taken the Zookyear, and you can take it like 3 years after you graduate. So I know some people who have gone back home and worked a little bit, and then have come back to the Netherlands for ZooQR option. So yeah, there are many. It really depends on where do you want to stay. If I decide to stay a few years back in the Netherlands, get some job experience, then I can also possibly do the ZooQR route. Right now, I am a little bit undecided about what I want to do next, but I'm fairly okay with it because I do have a fallback job to go back to. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Arunima. Kristen, maybe you want to add you can give a general idea of where normally students end up at when they graduate from this particular major.
Yeah, I think, as I said, a lot of our students do come in having already been working for some time, and so sometimes they are going back to positions. You know, they've taken time off of work to study, and then they're going back to those positions with enhanced knowledge about the kinds of issues that they work with. So that's one option. We do have some people who do take advantage of the extension of their student visa to search for work in the Netherlands, and they end up here. You know, sometimes for the long term. I think some people in the first batch that I taught in 2010 are still here in the Netherlands. One or two maybe, but most of them are back in their home countries, working, sometimes in a third country. I mean, so there's a lot of different options. I don't think there's really clear patterns, because it depends a lot on people's circumstances, you know, as mentioned, like whether you have a job to go back to or not. And so some people think, okay, if I don't have a job back home, I can stay here and look around at different possibilities and see what comes up. But yeah, I mean, we do, I think, provide a lot of support in that as well, in terms of making people aware of different jobs and internship opportunities, things like that. So yeah, I mean, there are students like that who end up working with maybe a Dutch organization. I mean, one student I'm thinking of who was in my first batch, she was from Egypt, and that was at the time when the Arab Spring sort of political unrest was going on, and she actually got a job in Amsterdam working with an organization where she is the Middle East representative. So she had this opportunity to sort of visit home often as part of her job, but she still is based in Amsterdam. So there are those kinds of arrangements that sometimes work out, but it's highly variable depending on one's circumstances, the circumstances of, you know, if you have funding or a scholarship where some of that is dictated, sometimes you're coming back specifically because of that. But for others, you know, it's open, and they do have this option to really look for work around here if they so choose. And I think it used to be quite expensive to apply for that extension of your visa, and now it's dropped dramatically from something like 600 to, what is it now, 100 and something?
Close to 200 something.
Yeah, it's around
174.
174. That's a I knew one of you would know a very precise number. But yeah, so suddenly it's a lot cheaper to apply. You know, it did cost 600 at one point for that visa, and so that's really, I think, in the last few years since the price of it dropped, people said, well, then I'll try it. You know, I'll try my luck and see if I can find something in this year. So yeah, I mean, there's different options for people.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen, and also, of course, you can also do your PhD at ISS if you wish so after you graduate from the master program. And also just a little bit of background of some of our alumni from last year. I do keep in touch with them, and I think the one that have stayed in the Netherlands, half of them have a job. They found a job in the Netherlands. So even though there is a problem with the crisis going on with the pandemic and all, but there is still a job market here that requires your experience as well. So it's not all doom and gloom in the Netherlands, let's say, if you're planning to stay here, of course. So it's now 2:02. So we have to conclude the webinar session for the Spd major. I would like to thank Dina, Arunima, and Kristen for taking their time off from their busy schedule to share their experience and also give a general idea of what you can expect when you study at ISS, particularly for the Spd major. If you have any further questions, you can send it to me. I have put in the chat function my email address, study@iss.nl. you can always reach me. And if you would like to speak to one of the current students, I can try to arrange that. But we will have to see how busy they are, because term 2 is pretty busy. So I'm sure they will reply to you, but it may take time. So with that, I would like to conclude the presentation, and we hope to see you in September this year. Bye, guys.
Bye.